Hello? The Hangout on air is live. Maybe. Nothing makes me feel like a more technologically illiterate grandmother than trying to deal with Google Hangouts and YouTube Hangouts. It says I'm live. Are we here? Are we here? I think we're here. Oh, okay. I see me. Hold on. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second show of the month. This is for November. I'm sure more people will be showing up. Welcome. Today, I can't hear myself. Hold on, I gotta pull these off. I'm live. Oh, hello, chat. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Megan. Welcome. This is gonna be so much fun. For people who are watching this in the future on YouTube, if you want to be a part of these show of the month hangouts, you should check out my Patreon page. There'll be a link down in the thing. And if you're watching this live, the chat is over there, or it might be over there. Who knows? It's somewhere. We're here to talk about Les Miz, the seminal Broadway piece, or really, I think, to a greater extent, the seminal West End piece. Les Mis is certainly, I've heard a lot of people refer to this trend as the Euro musical, as this kind of European influence on musical theater. So musical theater, at least in my world, is, or at least as far as I've studied, is it's Americana. It's one of the first truly American art forms. All sorts of other art forms, have roots that go way back. Painting goes all the way back to pictures of giant animals on cave walls, and we've been singing and making music forever and ever. But actual musical theater, started with Oklahoma, started with a musical named after a state. And so Les Mis, from its very inception, is interesting that way, in that it is not from, in big air quotes, the homeland, if you know what I mean. That's, I think, one of the cool things about Les Mis. Now, I need to get this out of the way. I wrote down some disclaimers. I am going to have awful French pronunciation throughout this whole dang thing, because I suck at pronunciation in English and pronouncing things in English, so my French is going to be great. I've had this question a lot, opinions on the movie. So I have a little bit of a confession to make. I've never made it all the way through the movie. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've watched a lot of the songs, but Les Mis is all the way sung through, but I've never actually sat down and watched the entire thing. I bet you I've seen most of it all the way through, but I've never seen it from front to back. That said, what I like about Les Mis the movie is the same thing I like about Les Mis the Broadway play. I'm a musical theater nerd. I'm a musical theater dork, and anything that brings musical theater to the masses, I am already behind. I'm already for. I'm already like, let's get this out there. Let's get more people involved. And I think, Les Mis in general is a popular musical. You ask someone who doesn't have a musical theater channel to name a musical, and Les Mis is probably going to be on that list. And so making the movie, bringing it to the world, bringing it in cinemas across the country, I think is great. I think, even in what I've seen, I think Russell Crowe was an interesting choice. You want that name recognition. From what I've heard him sing, it's not the best. I think Hugh Jackman is great. I think Anne Hathaway is great. Aaron, whose last name I can never pronounce, but I call him Aaron Tveit, is fabulous. And, I could watch him do anything for hours and it would be great. I think in general, it's nice to see that. It's nice to see the movie happen. What I wonder, and I wonder this about the Into the Woods movie too. Les Mis, I wonder it more about Les Mis. So Les Mis is a show, I think, that is predicated on a lot of production choices. You have to have the big red flag. You have to do the marching dance. There's an assumption that there's going to be a turntable. Like, there's a lot of just things that are built into this musical. And I know the contemporary, the production that's closing in September has reimagined some of these things, and I've seen some other reimaginings of it. But you know, Les Mis would be a difficult piece to place a concept on. You know, you can't do Les Mis the musical in space. That'd be weird. What I wonder about the movie is if it's going to have any long-standing effects on the productions of the play, because a movie of a production, you know, then it's done, it's set in stone or copied down in celluloid, basically. And to see that pan out, like I wonder what productions of Les Mis are going to look like in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. I wonder if we're ever going to see people take risks with it, people take chances with it. One of the most interesting productions of Les Mis I ever saw was done in the round. So audience on four sides, basically. It was a square stage. And that already diminishes a lot of the kind of built-in production choices. You know, not only does it make a turntable an odd choice, but just the concept of something like a barricade. How do you have people on one side of a barricade and on the other side of the barricade when you have to have people all around? And it was very cool. They made some very interesting choices. I thought it was mildly successful. The other part of your question, think about recording the actors and singing live. I think that is always worth it if possible. I wish it, you know, when Les Mis came out, that was the shtick of their advertising. It was like, oh, the orchestra is going to be there and we're going to be recording live. And like, let's, you know, I wish it wasn't even a, like a selling point. It wasn't a shtick, but that was just the default, especially if you're taking something that is already written to be performed live. You know, I think we've had the technological advances to make that sort of thing happen since way before 2012. It's a shame that it's taken this long. I hope it becomes the standard, because you can be so much more expressive when you're performing live. And with something like a musical, the devil's in the singing. Like that's where the details of the acting happens. And to be able to do another take and make a vastly different choice with the orchestra that's there right now is really useful and really helpful. Whereas with something where you've already pre-recorded a backing track, you can only make so many different choices based upon that. You know, you're kind of locked in from whatever was laid down in the recording studio. And I think that can be limiting, especially when you're setting something down forever, so you want it to be perfect. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the movies. One of these days I'll watch it. Maybe I'll put a video up. Won't that be fun? I think that'd be fun. So one of the production let me tell you a little bit about my background with Les Mis. Of course, I listen to it all the time. It's wonderfully fabulous music. I do think the music, I wish there was a better way to say this. I think the music gets a little repetitive. I don't mean that as a bad thing. It's not even that you're hearing a lot of the same songs over and over. It seems like Schoenberg and Buble, those are their names? Yeah, Schoenberg and Buble. There's only like 6 or 7 tunes through the whole thing, and I would love to see some kind of breakdown or graphical representation of that. And it is the difficulty of a sung through musical, is like you can't. It's hard to write something new every time, and if you want people to focus on the words, you need to have melodies that they recognize. But to me, it gets, you know, it makes me tune into the big songs and skip the small songs. And I want an album where I can listen to the whole thing. I think that's one of the failings of the writing. Not failings, one of the down points for me. Does it mean I don't love it? Of course not. I absolutely love it. My introduction to Les Mis, and this is fabulous. When I was in high school, I was part of something called the high school all-state production here in Illinois. It was like the championships of theater. A whole bunch of kids could audition, a whole bunch of kids could be part of the thing, and then they'd take this production to this big theater festival in January, and it would have like 30 different schools with kids in the production, and then 100 different high schools would attend. It was awesome. It was like the all-stars of musical theater. And I tech directed it, and that was a lot of fun. But, and here is where my life is fantastic, in this particular production, Eponine was played by high school-aged Pippa Sue of Hamilton fame currently, and she was fabulous. I probably talked to her maybe once. She was also very intimidating, but it was a lot of fun. So my introduction to this was working on it with a bunch of high schoolers, hanging lights, building the set, and I did have a very minor last-minute starring role in it. The kid playing, what's it called? The army officer, you know, the offstage, like, you at the barricades, listen to this, you have no friends. He got really sick the night before opening, and they were scrambling around to try and find someone to do it, and everyone was doing a costume change at that time. So for exactly one night, and one night only, me, in my cruddy singing voice, stood backstage into the reverb mic and went, you at the barricades, listen to this, you have no friends, no one is coming to help you to fight, or whatever the hell it was. And that, you know, it was really, it's all been downhill from there, from my starring role. Ooh, I gotta catch up with chat. What does this say? I do think, so, you know, do you think that the Les Miz movie possibly changing future productions, do you think other large film productions and Into the Woods will have similar issues? I do. So I come, you know, mostly from a high school world, and not to burst anyone's bubbles, but at least in my experience of high school directing and high school production, because you're on such a time constraint, and because the focus is so much more on the children's educational experience, you find ways to take as many shortcuts as you can. So if I were designing a professional production of something, my research would be about the period it's set in, would be about reading the script, about, you know, all that artsy-fartsy stuff, becoming one with the piece. When I'm doing research to design a high school production, my research is watch the movie, look up photos from other productions, and see what has worked for other people. And I do think that is less artistic. And I do think, especially in some other high schools, that can border on plagiarism a little bit. But because the focus is on what the children learn, it doesn't really matter what I do. It doesn't matter what my design is or what my directing choices are. It matters what the kids do and what experience they get. And so because of that, and because I think high school productions of Les Mis are going to be, by and large, the place where we see new interpretations of Les Mis, I do think the movies of Les Mis and the movies of Into the Woods are going to have vast repercussions on how these pieces are interpreted. You know, you already have something set down in stone, and you have a place to jump off from. You know, those people who want to cheat, like me sometimes, like some other people, will, because these things exist. So with Les Mis, with Into the Woods, with Sweeney Todd, all of these contemporary movies, you copy, you beg, borrow, and steal, and, you know, it's kind of okay and kind of not, and that's what you do. And that's weird to say, seeing as you know, you look at the production quality of the Les Mis movie, and it's certainly, you know, it's not something that even you could reproduce on a Broadway budget, much less a high school budget. But I'm sure we're going to see bits of it showing their face in high school production for years to come. Well, okay. Dream cast for a stage production. Oh, we should do another Food Network star. Hold on, I got to cheat because they all have French names. This is, Jimmy and I talked about this on the podcast, and I don't remember if I left it in. I suck at character names and actor names. It's just a failing of mine. And this one makes it even more difficult because all of their names are in French. Now let me make it Food Network stars. So I have to cheat. I'm cheating right here. None of you can see this, but I have to bring up a list of people because otherwise the jokes wouldn't be funny. I mean, okay, so Jean Valjean. Ooh, for me, that would be a toss-up between Guy Fieri and Emerald. I think it would be, you know, it's always fun to see Guy Fieri's musical theater acting abilities, but I do think Emerald would bring that kind of honesty to the part. And then I think Javert would absolutely be Elton John. I mean, have you met a more evil-looking cook? Then I definitely think Eponine would be, what's her name? The Barefoot Contessa. I think she would be just fabulous as Eponine. Yeah, Alton Brown. Did I say Elton Brown? I got confused. You know, Elton Brown, Elton John, they're the same person. So, yeah, you're right there with me. See? For those of you watching this in the future, chat is making fun of me. I'm running into my microphone. Yeah, I don't know. I always one of the things I love most about Les Mis is the different because it's been produced so many times and in so many different places, you get to see some really different interpretations of the same material and the same character, and there's so much material and character to go on. You know, you have not only the libretto and the music, but the whole Victor Hugo novel. And just to see the different things. I mean, in the, what is it? Is it the 25th anniversary concert? One of the anniversary concerts where they're like, and now Jean Valjean's from 52 different countries, from 1.5 million different countries, and they all march in with the flags. And even just to see in their own languages and their own cultural interpretations, the different ways to do that role is just wonderful and fantastic. I do think it speaks to some of the lingering flaws with Les Mis. Les Mis, because it's sung through and because it has this kind of epic Euro music feel, lends itself to a perceived overacting, or at least it's a kind of indulgent form of acting. You know, there's a lot of meat to these parts, and it's very, there's not a lot of subtlety when you're singing what you're thinking, as you do in Les Mis. I'm sure as an actor, that's great and that's wonderful. I can see how that could turn some people off to the musical, and I also think that makes it very easy to make some kind of ham-fisted choices with the roles. Some, you know, slightly too big choices. And of course, every acting choice is dependent upon the production and the house and all sorts of wonderful things. But yeah, I don't know. I think I enjoy watching different interpretations of a part. It's like getting the same puzzle but solving it in a different way. That's one of the things I enjoy most about musical theater, is watching different interpretations of the part. Speaking of, have you seen, it's right here, I'll put this in the chat now, it's a YouTube video, and I'll put it in the description later if I remember. Does it link that? Oh, that's silly if it does. Oh, it does. Oh, good. I love technology. If you haven't seen this, I imagine most of you have. It's the Broadway bonnet, the youngest Valjean. He must be, I don't know, 10? I never know how to judge the age of young kids, but he is, he plays Ineligible, whatever his name is, Ineligible, the kid, holy, oh, people down, in the recent production of Les Mis, I hope I got this right. And he plays Jean Valjean, against Javert in the best musical theater song in the world, The Confrontation, and it is the most fantastic thing in the world. It's halfway between adorable and scary to watch this, you know, tiny little kid take on Javert, the evil, well, not evil, but at least the antagonist. I think, you know, Javert is, of course, the struggling antagonist, the antagonist who doesn't twirl his mustache and, of course, comes to the wonderful conclusion at the end, and just great. I think one of the tragedies of the show, and I imagine the tragedy of the novel, although I've never read it, is that Valjean never hears of Javert's fate. And I you know, it's beautifully tragic that these two vastly dichotomized hero and anti-hero who've been battling the whole time, and then finally Javert, you know, reaches his precipice and commits suicide, and Valjean never hears of it. He hears of so many other outcomes of this whole life, but never hears what happened to poor old Javert. You know, he jumped and that bridge flew up into the sky, and it's just so sad. But yeah, isn't this adorable? Tiny Jean Valjean, tiny. And so I was going down the Broadway bonnet wormhole on YouTube is just delightful, and I recommend it highly. Here is another one. This is it's maybe a little less entertaining, but is definitely contemporary. It's the cast of In the Heights, and they including younger, fresher face looking Lin-Manuel Miranda performing Un Dia Más for their Broadway bonnet, and it's just as wonderful and just as fantastic. So throw that back in. I have seen, it is a wicked big novel. I have seen just kids at my school carrying the thing around, and it's huge. You know, I made fun of a kid. I was like, why don't you put that on a Kindle? It's so much, it'll be so much lighter. Let me scroll up. I missed some chat. I do. So the concept of a Euro musical, and you're absolutely right, Kevin, that Andrew Lloyd Webber's stuff is also in this weird Euro musical world. It's an interesting classification, I think. Definitely a product of like the late 70s, early 80s, and not just from Europe. I mean, I think there are things that are vaguely in that Euro musical world that premiered on Broadway, but kind of that subtle rock pop opera with a lot of power ballads. I mean, there's a lot of things in Les Miz that reek of that rock power pop feeling of you know, the mid 80s. When did even Les Miz come out? I'm doing a great job at my research today. BT dubs. That was sarcasm. Oh yeah, 1980. Yay me. 1985 premiere in the West End. So that kind of like, you know, very what's the word I'm looking for? The opposite of syncopated, like that really steady rock synthesized beat definitely is emblematic of these Euro musicals. And it is interesting to me that they are the ones that have made it into popular culture. So much more so than a lot of the other more traditional musical theater stuff. So you have like Les Mis, you have Phantom of the Opera, you have Evita. I mean, they've been the popular things, the things that have been long running, both in America and on the West End, so much more than some of the other stuff. And I don't, you know, it is one of my incomplete video scripts at this point, but I don't have good reasoning as to why that is, why these are the popular things, because as much as they sound like pop music of the time to us looking backwards, I don't think they sounded like the pop music to the people at the time, or that's at least what I would hypothesize. So who knows? I asked people to tweet me questions, and there are some great ones. So this one I wanted to touch on. Someone asked, why is Les Mis so overproduced and can't be on break before it's revived? And this is hilarious to me, because it's absolutely right. Like, the moment Les Mis closes, it seems to open again. The moment the original production, all right, let me bring it up. So on Broadway, it opened in 1987, and then the first US tour began that same year. Then the Broadway revival opened in 2006, right on the tails of like the third US tour. And then right after the 2006 revival closed, like a year later or so, the current Broadway revival opened. Like, Les Mis is always playing in some form or another on Broadway, but it's not the same production on Broadway. Whereas in the West End, it's still playing, I believe. This is interesting to me, that people's affection for this musical kind of waxes and wanes. I don't know why, but it seems to be the case, at least. You know, it's not something you can always go see, but there's always some kind of Les Mis thing happening. You know, you throw into that the different anniversary concerts, which certainly had to fall at certain years, but there was interest. People showed up. And, you know, it makes it feel kind of overproduced. You know, it makes it feel like, oh, we're doing Gypsy again. Well, you know, time to roll out those costumes all over again, or the same way that Fiddler feels, but they're not as old. They're more contemporary musicals, and it's really interesting to me. I love the production history of Les Mis. I love its kind of place as it sits in a weird part of Broadway history in my mind. It's cool. It's interesting. What else do we got along here? As someone who doesn't really care for the French Revolution, why should I see it? I've been yelled at for calling Les Mis a musical about the French Revolution. And on some days, I agree. On some days, I think Les Mis is not a musical about the French Revolution. It's a musical about people who are living in France and Paris in and around the French Revolution. But that also just kind of makes it about the French Revolution. You know, it's a moment in history musical. It doesn't start with the French Revolution, and I think for very specifically, you know, as I'm sure the novel does as well, you need to know all sorts of background to understand why these things are happening. And it's more nuanced, and so the best way to understand that is through these characters, is through the kind of classist power struggle between Jean Valjean and Javert, and then everyone else we meet. You know, you either belong to one class or the other, or you're struggling to move from one class to the other, and that is the motivation behind the whole dang thing. It's great. It's wonderfully interesting. Would you ever try to reimagine the staging lighting design to something totally different? Do you think it would work if you changed it dramatically? I would love, Megan, more than anything else, to try and experiment with Les Mis, to try and turn it on its head, to do something new with it. I don't have any specific ideas, unless I come up with something in the next couple minutes. What I would wonder is people, you know, I think this is marginally related to why interest in Les Mis kind of waxes and wanes. People who go to see Les Mis now, they're, you know, because it's such a popular old show, not old, but popular, well-known show, you don't go to Les Mis not knowing anything about it. You don't go to Les Mis thinking, I wonder what's going to happen. You have some sense. You know they're going to wave a big red flag or something. And I imagine more people go to Les Mis knowing exactly what's going to happen. They're the diehard fans. They're the parents in that wonderful YouTube video where they're on their way back from the movie just sobbing because it was everything they loved. And I think to turn that on its head is a dangerous prospect, because the diehard fans of Les Mis could very easily ride you out on a rail. But it, that would be fun. That would be something that would be exciting to do. And it would be important to find a reason to do it more, that, don't just be different for difference sake, but at least to approach it from an interesting angle. I'd love to see a pared down minimalist version of Les Mis, something along the lines of the Sondheim and Company revivals, where they play their own instruments. Not necessarily that they need to play their own instruments, because that would be funny. But something, it currently in all of its productions reeks of this big epic, it feels like a war tale in a lot of different ways. And there's things, there's one production I saw a YouTube video of that takes place in a gigantic outdoor theater with like huge 3-story sets behind the whole thing. And it's just gigantic. I would love to see Les Mis structured for like 150 seat space, because I think some of the smaller numbers, On My Own, A Little Fall of Rain, all, Stars, like all of those solo things, anything that doesn't have a chorus in a small intimate setting where you're this far away from the singer, can be just so moving and so, I don't know, intimate and wonderful. Oh, no, please be hyper obnoxious. I love corrections. It's not about the capital French Revolution. It's about a smaller June-July revolution of 1830. Really. I believe that. So like this is, and I'm dramatically misinformed because I never do good research. But this is probably why I've been yelled at for calling this about the French Revolution proper, when it's actually, that's really interesting. I wonder if this would, what do you think? Do you think it would be interesting to do an epilogue to this about the French Revolution proper? I always think it would be fun to string together. Jimmy and I talked about this on the, what was it? The Fiddler on the Roof podcast, where Fiddler on the Roof in many ways is kind of a prequel to Ragtime, and Les Mis in many ways is a prequel or contemporary story to Hamilton. That would be fun to do. What if you do a double billing of like Hamilton and Les Mis and like pull all the, I would love to do something like that. That would be so much fun. I know, pared down Les Mis, only 427 characters. Like I'm looking, I was brushing up on my plot through the French Revolution, through the Les Mis Wikipedia page, and like everyone has a name. There's so many different characters. It's a complicated episodic plot. This is another reason why it's surprising to me that this show is so popular, because it is a difficult to follow episodic plot. It's not one character's arc through something from beginning to end. Like Jean Valjean in Act 2 is kind of just an observer in a lot of ways. He doesn't have a lot of active role once we hit Revolution Land. I mean, certainly he drags, who is it? Is it Marius? Yeah, down into the sewers. Certainly he makes some choices, but a lot of it is just about everything else that's going on. When you meet so many people and you meet so many people so quickly, and young actors turn into old actors, and everyone is related to someone, but only kind of, and it's not terribly important. And my sense is that the populace don't like complicated plots like that. And so it is interesting to me that this has survived so successfully. Yeah, The Scarlet Pimpernel definitely is a prequel to Les Mis, and definitely in a lot of the same style. Isn't that don't they share a something? Maybe I'm wrong by that. Isn't the music by someone, or have I just entirely made that up in my mind? That's always a possibility, that I've made up a fact in my mind. Yep, entirely different. Musical theater facts coming to you straight from the internet. Despite there being only really a handful of themes, what's my favorite song? I go back and forth on this a whole lot. It's like choosing a favorite kid. On some days, I'm a big fan of the huge sweeping epics. One Day More, and the does the finale have another song? Why am I blanking on the name of that song? What the heck is it called? Do You Hear the People Sing? The reprise. Are just that power, like in both of the anniversary concerts, just to hear the giant choirs behind them sing in all of those songs is just beautiful. But then I swing to the other side and I think Bring Him Home and these quieter things. I'm doing great on names of songs today. The On My Own. Jesus Christ. I'm doing great with songs. On My Own is just beautiful and just wonderful and just touching. And like to be able to swing so quickly between those things, oh, it's just great. And then I go into what role would I want to be cast in? And Monsieur Thénardier would be just my favorite role. I've always been cast as Second Bananas and like, oh, I got the funny lines, and to be the funny lines. Oh God, no. For those watching this in the future, on the topic of my favorite song, chat says, please don't say Castle on a Cloud. I don't know why Castle on a Cloud is in this musical. It doesn't progress the plot. It just introduces Cosette, and it's just young Cosette, so why even bother? And it just feels annoying. And I think, I would not be surprised if the only reason it hasn't been cut is because Cosette with the broom is the poster of the dang thing, and you have to keep the poster in the play. Otherwise, then you've lost that marketing gimmick. I think on that topic, this is where Cameron McIntosh's genius really shines. And I think it's really important to point out his producerial, is that a word? We'll pretend it's a word. His producerial genius in creating this show, because he's the one who turned it from a small French musical in Paris to the smash hit in the West End it is today. And he is notorious for his marketing materials, things like Les Miz, things like Cats, where it is an iconic, unchanging logo with no pull quotes from reviews, with nothing, just the title of the piece and the one image you see. And I don't know if they've ever marketed Les Miz without that picture of Cosette and some kind of flag imagery. And I don't think they should. Something about it just really evokes the feeling of the whole show. I wonder if it ever confuses people, because it's not a show about Cosette at all. She is not the main character. She's not in it a whole lot. I mean, I think Cosette is certainly the future looking forward of the show, but it's absolutely much more a show about Jean Valjean and Javert than it is about Cosette. They're the B plot. Yeah, interesting. Yes. Castle on a Cloud is not quite as bad as Little People, but at least with Little People, you have the satisfaction of Gavroche being shot afterwards. Is that a bad thing to say? It's children and singing is just rough. It's just rough to make children sing, says the teacher. I'm doing great. There was another question on. Oh no, I know what I wanted to do. Okay. As usual, I did some BuzzFeed quizzing to see what they've got out there. So first I want to take this one, which is pretty cut and dry, but it's called How Well Do You Know Les Misérables? I don't think I'm actually going to do very good. because these are the sort of things I suck at. Who is the protagonist of Les Mis? Jean Valjean, Javert, Jean Valjean, Javert. Oh, these are fun. Jean Valjean with an L. Who's the antagonist? Oh, this is a sillier quiz than I want, Javert. Why is Jean Valjean in prison? He broke a door. He punched he stole a wheel of cheese. Hold on, chat. Doesn't Gavroche die? Yeah. At least in our production, he did. Maybe we made that up. Why is Jean Valjean in prison? He broke a door. He punched a policeman. Oh, I wish he stole a wheel of cheese. He stole a loaf of bread. Oh, I'm ditching this quiz because it's stupid. Let's do this quiz instead. Are you more like Cosette or Eponine? Join me on this, chat. We're all going to take this. Choose a French city to live in. I'm going to choose this one. Oh, that's pretty. Pick a date to go on with Marius. Dinner for two. Morning hike. Oh, this is going to be rough. Would you rather be book smart or street smart? I wonder which one. I wonder which one they're pushing me towards. What kind of dreams do you dream? Dark, uneasy dreams or pleasant, happy dreams? This is our goal. Someone needs to go on BuzzFeed and make a better quiz than this. Are you are you master of your house? Heck yeah, or not yet? I want a t-shirt that says that. How miserable are you? Pretty effing miserable or not that miserable? I got Eponine. We are all Eponine. I want a t-shirt that says we are all Eponine. Wandering through the streets of Paris, singing at the sky, watching out for tigers coming at night. What a sad, sad world we live in, where we all have to be Sacha Baron Cohen and Helena Bonham Carter's daughter. Sad world. You got Cosette! We're not all Eponine. There's hope in the world, Megan. There's hope in the world. Oh, I'm so happy. I think Cosette's fine. It's not like when I got Dr. Dillerman on Wicked. Cosette, well, my I don't know, my grandmother, chat says Cosette is the girl your grandmother wants you to marry. My grandmother's going to be a little disappointed in a couple different ways. Oh, boy. I do admit I was re-listening to Les Mis today in preparation because I do, despite how it may seem, I do some research for these things. And I just get the order of the plot confused in my mind. Maybe it's just because I'm stupid. But remembering it's not a cause and effect kind of musical. We don't go really linearly from A to B. And I'm sure that's what happens when you adapt a 5 million page novel is, you lose the plot a little bit along the way. I can't think of another musical like that. I can't think of another show that is so, I don't know, scattershot in some ways. Those are the things I don't like about Les Mis. I like Les Mis maybe, 70%. Some of the things drive me a little nuts. The kind of scattershot of the plot, the always singing. I always have a problem with this. If you're gonna do an opera in musical theater form where everything's sung, then everything you sing must have importance. And not everything sung in Les Mis has importance, and that's really disappointing sometimes. Maybe that's the adaptation I would love to see, where we adapt out some of the interstitial songs and some of the pieces that in a more traditional book musical would just be text, or cut them, God forbid. That'll be the production we put on. Maybe that'll be the live production we put on. It's also, I wonder, it feels like a history lesson often. That's something I don't like about Les Mis. Oh, sorry, Megan, did I miss you? If you could describe Les Mis as a whole as a food, what would it be? Oh, God. That's a great question. If you could describe Les Mis as a food, what would it be? Well, it would have to be something. Les Mis is like a pizza. Stay with me on this. Not like your Domino's pizza that you ordered for yourself because you live alone and you know who's going to make you dinner, but like the pizza everyone ordered at once, where like you passed around the computer and everyone was like, oh, I want olives on my slice, and oh, pineapple over here. And then when it arrives and you open up the box, it's really difficult to keep the different pieces straight. And you're like, wait, I thought that part had olives on it, but then all of a sudden you end up with the pineapple. That's how I would describe Les Mis as a food, I think. A weird pizza. Here's the description of Cosette. Pretty, kind, and basically perfect. It's no wonder you ended up with Marius. You may have had a rough childhood, but you got the life now, girl. I think you are basically perfect, Megan. I think you are. It clearly, if BuzzFeed says it, then it must be truth. You know, BuzzFeed holds no prisoners. They make no lies. I think we've kind of lost the Les Mis plot here. Oh God. But I've lost my notes. I've lost everything. It's a mess. It's a mess, everyone. I am the epitome of professional production on YouTube. Right. So when we did Les Mis as the Allstate, part of Javert's plot line is that he goes up through the ranks in Paris, right? First, he's like, what, a prison foreman, and then he's basically a policeman, and then he becomes a general in the army. And this is never in the text, but the way they signify this is by changing his costume, or really, if you're me, changing his hat. And so we had a running joke backstage, because like first he's wearing like a tiny little hat, and then he comes out in I can't remember what comes first, but he wears like a Captain Crunch hat, and then he wears a tricorn with the 3 points, at least in our production. And they're all black, and like he's very dark and black and everything. And we had this joke that it should just be every time Javert comes out, he should come out wearing a different hat, a different crazy hat, but they should all be sleek and black. So like one time he should come out in a Carmen Miranda fruit headdress with like a black grapes and black bananas and black sort of stuff. And then one time he should come out in a top hat, but that's so big that it goes around him and goes down to his ankles. And like, it got so funny backstage. We got in trouble for like snickering and laughing. That was the note in the story I wanted to tell. On the Cosette Marius topic, are the happy couples like Joanna, Anthony, Sweeney Todd reduced to plot devices since, well, they're kind of boring? I think that's definitely a thing that happens, Kevin. I think it's more the peril of a B-plot character. I see this happen in a lot of musical theater, and it's a good writing device. It happens in a lot of movies too. I mean, the good Star Wars trilogy does this as well. Star Wars trilogy. The kind of idea of meanwhile back at the ranch, when you have an A plot and a B plot, you get to, you do the thing, and then you do it up to the point where it's interesting, and then you switch to the other plot. Meanwhile back at the ranch, here's what's happening. And that lets you skip the unnecessary plot points in the plot you're not in. And so it lets you weave a very, interesting story from these two different plots. In the world of musical theater, at least in older musical theater, it also just makes things easier, because the B plot usually would happen in a curtain in front of the A plot set, so you could change it and shift it. And I do think that Cosette and Marius and Joanna and Anthony, yes, these kind of sitcom stereotypes are relegated to this B plot because love stories are simpler. I mean, the interesting story is the Valjean Javert. That's the story you don't know how it's going to end, or at least you don't know the options. In a love story, it's you just have two. Either they're going to fall in love and live happily ever after, or one of them's going to die, or they're going to break up and they're not going to live happily ever after, and that's it. With, Valjean and Javert, it's not as easy as falling in love and living happily ever after, despite what Tumblr keeps trying to tell me. But so that makes it interesting. And I wish, where you see musicals where the love story is the main focus, I think you get slightly more nuanced representations. Something like, I don't know, Fun Home. Even if you go back, Guys and Dolls has a more nuanced love story than Les Miz does, and it's because it's part of, it's part of the main plot, like all of those Frank Lesser shows. How to Succeed in Business, where it's the A plot that's the love story, then the outcome is less certain. But once the B plot becomes the love story, like in Les Mis, like in a lot of musicals, it gets less so. Doing a research paper on Les Mis. I want your life. That sounds amazing. I wanted to know what you think of the moral values and themes in this show. Ooh. This is almost as good as your food question, Megan. Almost. It's certainly a show about morals. You look at just Valjean and Javert, and like that's how it starts. It's a musical predicated on whether or not stealing a loaf of bread because you're poor and can't eat should be a crime. That is even before the inciting incident. What I think is an interesting progression. So we're introduced to Valjean as this guy who, a good guy who stole a loaf of bread because he had to. But then even in the first couple minutes of the musical, we see his morals go out the window. He steals the silver from the church. And I think that progression is really interesting, because I always wonder the thing that brings it back, like the thing that gives him his morals back. As far as the text of the musical is concerned, it is God. It is, the big deity in the sky. It is the existence of morals. Like literally, there's the symbolism of the priest, bishop, cardinal, religious guy, saying like, I have saved your soul for God. Where this is interesting to me. Sidebar: Marius and Arnulfo Pla are also my favorite musical bromance. What is interesting to me about deity, God, as motivating force. So one of the things I like to do in every musical, every play, to find the one thesis line in the text, the one line in the whole show that encompasses the moral or the plot. In Little Shop of Horrors, it's, but whatever they offer you, don't feed the plants. And it's symbolism for like, don't give in to greed or lust or whatever it is that the plant represents. In something like, I don't know, in Hamilton, would be something like, I'm not throwing away my shot. And that whole idea of like taking advantage of the moment that's in front of you and like using your shot to the best of your ability. And then all the metaphor that draws with it of all the duels that happen in the whole thing. In Les Mis, this thesis line, I think absolutely is, to love another person is to see the face of God. And so you have the themes of love and the themes of God and how they affect what we do and what our morals are. Almost every action that someone takes in this musical is motivated by one of those two things, love or God. It would be interesting to draw that all the way through, to see who's doing it for what, and to see where that takes them. I mean, even Jean Valjean's pre-inciting incident, stealing a loaf of bread, is for the sake of love. to support his family, to support his children. His decision to start a new life for himself is for the sake of God, because the priest saved his life. You see the only clear villains in the whole thing, the Thénardiers, have neither. They have neither love nor God. You see Javert struggle with this. He has his emblematic morals, which you can kind of shove into that God category. Like this is what we're destined to be. This is what we're destined to do. I think that fits. But then that comes in conflict with these very human ideals of love, of, maybe this is the bromance between Valjean and Javert, but of like, he sees these things that Valjean does out of compassion and does out of love for not only other people, but for him. And that comes into direct conflict with his God complex. And that paradox drives him to suicide. It's an interesting thing to watch play out, the whole love for humans and respect for morals and our place and God. And then, Les Miz is a musical with an acknowledged afterlife. Everyone comes back to life in the finale, not back to life, but we see the dead people as Valjean dies. And it's interesting. The theological backings of the whole thing, that kind of God-given morals, God-given place in life, is an interesting theme. That would be where I would look for the idea of moral values throughout the whole thing. How that conflicts with love, because it even drives just the theory of the idea of the whole revolution. Is there's these God-given, big air quotes, classist structures of the whole society that set up the rich and the poor, that creates the unrest among the students and everyone. But then that comes into conflict with the morals of like, we should be caring for people, and Lamarck is the one who cared for us, and now he's dead, and now we're building a barricade and shooting each other, like crazy. Yeah, I don't know. Chat says creepy close-up on contorted hands, so now I'm going to do more because that clearly seemed it. So I got this. Welcome to Backstage at Musical Mash. I have this wide angle lens, which I'm learning so much more about this, which distorts the field of view. So it lets you see more of my lovely, clean apartment, but it also makes things get really close really, really fast, so I can cover up my whole face with my hand. Ah! Wasn't that fun? Wasn't that a fun, exciting experience we all shared? I know I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too, with hands. Maybe I'll do a whole... What if I just started doing show of the week with my hands just like this and never removed them, and then just carefully framed my face with them? That would be... It's my new art. That's going to be my... As Euro musicals revolutionized musical theater, so will I with my new hand YouTubing. Quality content here on Musical Mash. The fire trucks are coming. I don't know if you all can hear this. This is a problem I have in my apartment all the time. I don't know. I can only imagine people are stealing bread down the street, because that's the only reason the police show up. But all effing time, fire trucks, ambulances, police cars are just always driving by. I have so many cut takes of show of the week and everything where it's just like wee woo, wee woo, wee woo. It's the worst. Absolutely the worst. I'm laughing at chat. You all are hilarious and wonderful people. And you're fantastic. Really. I'm so glad you're all here watching this. I love doing this. The December is really busy for me. I've just, have a bunch of holiday concerts that I'm working on and running is really what it is. And to be able to just take a moment and gab about musical theater, this is just the best. I'm so glad you all in internet land are out there to feed my crazy obsession with this kind of stuff. I'm glad you're as obsessed with it all as I am. It's just absolutely the best. Thank you all for sticking around. It's 7 o'clock. I have to go work on a whole bunch of other things. I have a podcast I need to prepare for. I got show of the week next week coming up. I'm working on a bunch of other videos. They're all coming out soon. Thank you all for coming. This is going to be up on the YouTube. Everyone can share it. If you're watching this in the future on the YouTube, hi everyone on the YouTube. I sound like my grandmother. Thanks for coming. I'll see you all later. Bye.